Okay, so you want to own a mobile home park. Here's the fact that changes everything. The park does not make its money on the homes sitting inside it. It makes its money on the dirt underneath them. Every trailer in that park is already worth less than it was last year, dropping in value the same way a car does the moment it leaves the lot. The ground under that trailer has done the opposite. Nationally, lot rents have climbed roughly 45% over the last decade, according to census data on manufactured housing communities. Read that again. The asset the resident owns depreciates every single year. The asset they will never own appreciates every single year, on the same lease, without lifting a finger. That gap, repeated across hundreds of lots in a single park, is the entire business. Here's how it actually works. A resident buys a manufactured home, financing $60,000 to $120,000 for a box that starts losing value the day it's installed on the lot. That's the obvious product, and it functions as a loss leader for whoever sells it, because chattel loans on manufactured homes routinely price several points above a standard mortgage, and the collateral is depreciating the entire time the loan is outstanding. Whoever holds that paper is betting against physics. The real money sits in the lease under the box. A monthly lot rent, charged for as long as that home occupies that patch of ground, whether the home is worth $100,000 or $10,000 by then. This is not an ordinary landlord-tenant relationship. It's closer to a toll booth with no exit ramp. Moving a manufactured home off a lot can cost several $1,000s, sometimes more than the home is worth, and many older units are legally too fragile to move at all under current transport codes, which quietly turns renting a lot into something closer to a one-way contract. So the resident is structurally trapped, and the owner of the land knows it. The operator who sells and finances the homes carries the depreciation risk and the credit risk. The owner of the ground underneath collects rent regardless of what happens to either one. Here's the problem. Those two roles look like the same business from the outside, but they are opposite bets, funded with opposite kinds of capital, and confusing them is exactly what kills operators who try to run both at once. In February 2004, a company called Affordable Residential Communities went public on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker ARC, priced at $19 a share, raising over $500 million in the offering. It used the proceeds, plus new mortgage debt, to buy more than 80 communities from a single seller in one transaction, and it kept expanding from there, eventually operating over 300 manufactured home communities and more than 60,000 home sites across 27 states, with concentrations around Dallas, Fort Worth, Atlanta, and Salt Lake City. But ARC didn't just collect ground rent. It also ran the obvious product directly: retail sale and financing of manufactured homes to its own residents, plus a consumer finance facility built specifically to fund those sales. That business bled cash and complicated its tax position so badly that in March 2006, ARC's board voted to give up its real estate investment trust status entirely, a structure built specifically to avoid corporate income tax on rental income. By January 2007, the company was raising emergency capital through an $80 million rights offering, and by April 2007, it was negotiating exclusively to sell its entire community's business outright. In July 2007, it closed a deal handing the operation to Farallon Capital Management and Helix Funds at a value equivalent to roughly $9.40 a share, net of debt. That's less than half of what shareholders paid at the IPO 3 years earlier. Occupancy across the portfolio had also slipped from around 81% toward the low 80s over that same stretch, even as the company kept adding communities and kept booking retail home sales through its own dealer network. The company renamed itself Hilltop Holdings and became an insurance shell, walking away from land ownership altogether, keeping only the fire and casualty underwriter it had bought along the way. ARC didn't die because people stopped needing cheap housing. It died because it tried to run the depreciating box business alongside the land business, and the box business dragged the whole structure down until it collapsed under its own tax exposure and its own balance sheet. The land underneath those same 300 communities kept collecting rent the entire time, uninterrupted, just under a different owner's name, with a different set of buyers happy to hold only the half of the business that actually worked. Look at what it costs to even open the toll booth. Raw land for a new community runs $50,000 to $200,000 an acre, depending on the market. Verify regional variance is wide. Then you have to make that dirt usable. Roads, water lines, sewer connections, and electrical service, running $5,000 to $20,000 per individual lot before a single home ever arrives. Do the math on 1 acre holding roughly 8 lots, $40,000 to $160,000 in infrastructure stacked on $50,000 to $200,000 in raw land, and none of it produces a home. It produces a legal, permitted, connected patch of dirt. Permitting, engineering, and zoning adjustments add another 10 to 15% on top of that, and environmental review can add 2 to 5% more, depending on the jurisdiction. This is not hype, this is math. On a per-lot basis, you're looking at somewhere between $11,000 and $45,000 of committed capital before a resident ever signs a lease. The capital goes into pipes, permits, and pavement, not into anything a resident will ever own outright, and it's spent whether the park fills up in 6 months or 6 years. Here's the trap nobody talks about. Once the park is running, money keeps flowing out whether lots are full or not. Property taxes come due every year regardless of occupancy, and a sale often triggers a reassessment that resets the tax bill higher for the new owner, right when they're least prepared to absorb it. Water and sewer systems, especially the septic and well systems common in older parks, need constant maintenance and eventual full replacement. On a timeline the owner does not get to choose. Insurance carries its own risk pricing. ARC actually acquired a specialty insurer, NLASCO, built to underwrite fire and casualty risk specifically on low-value dwellings and manufactured homes, because the mainstream market treats these structures as a distinct hazard class with its own premium curve, distributed through thousands of independent agents rather than the standard homeowner channel. Then there's regulation, and it's getting heavier every year. New York now caps annual lot rent increases at 3%, rising to 6% under certain conditions. Minnesota created a $10 million acquisition fund and a $15 million infrastructure fund specifically to help residents buy parks out from under their owners. 22 states now require advance notice before a park sale, and some grant residents a right of first refusal that can slow or kill a deal outright, sometimes adding months of legal cost before an owner can even close. This trap looks slightly different depending on the type of park, but it never disappears. All-age communities absorb more turnover and eviction costs, since Florida data shows eviction filings jump 40% in the months after a park sale. 55-plus communities see less turnover but slower rent growth tolerance among fixed-income residents, which caps how fast the owner can chase rising costs. Resident-owned cooperatives largely sidestep this category of risk altogether, which is precisely why none of the ROCUSA-backed cooperatives tracked in one recent count have ever defaulted or gone bankrupt. But whichever type you're looking at, the costs tick every single day, with or without a tenant occupying the lot. There's one factor the owner does not control, and it sits literally underneath the entire business. Call it the trapdoor under the floor, aging underground infrastructure. Parks built in the 1960s and 70s were laid out with water and sewer systems, sized for a fraction of today's usage and none of today's code. When a 50-year-old sewer main fails, it fails all at once, and the fix can run into 6 figures, with residents unable to leave and the owner legally unable to delay the repair. Let that sit for a second. No amount of rent growth outruns a collapsed pipe. This is not a market risk or an interest rate risk. It's a physical, buried, invisible risk that shows up the moment it becomes an emergency, and it doesn't care what your occupancy rate looked like the week before, or how strong your rent roll was on paper, or how confidently the pitch deck described stable, recession-resistant cash flow. Do the math on a 60-lot park at the national average lot rent of $593 a month. In an optimistic year, occupancy holds at 95%, gross revenue lands near $406,000, operating costs eat roughly 35% of that, and net operating income comes out near $264,000. Against a purchase price set at a 7% cap rate, call it $3.7 million. That's a payback period of roughly 14 years on an all-cash basis. Faster with leverage layered on top, assuming lenders keep treating the asset class as favorably as they have for the past decade. Now, the realistic bad year. Occupancy slips to 82%, close to what ARC itself was reporting in the mid-2000s. A sewer main fails and costs $150,000 in unplanned capital. Insurance renews 20% higher after a regional claims spike, and a post-sale tax reassessment adds another $8,000 a year on top of everything else. Net operating income for that year drops close to zero once the emergency repair is absorbed, and the payback clock effectively resets to zero, no matter how many years of rent you'd already banked. This is not hype. This is math. And the math only works if nothing underground breaks and nothing legislative shifts in the meantime. So picture that resident again, parked on a patch of dirt they will never own, inside a box that loses value every year they live in it, paying a rent that only ever moves in one direction. The mobile home park is not the business. The land underneath it is the business.